coming up on More Than Before.
The fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of the what ifs is really what causes people this anxiety. And the only way you'll overcome it is if you do it.
This is More Than Before with Nathan Cook.
Hey everyone, welcome back. My guest today is a no BS kind of guy. He will tell it to you straight to your face, not because he wants to have an argument with you, because he truly does want the best for you in your life. He's the co-author of Eat It, the most sustainable diet and workout ever made, which is a Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller. He's the host of the Jordan Syatt mini podcast. He is sarcastic, funny, he's real. He's a husband, a father, and a truly down-to-earth dude. He's my friend, and I'm excited to have him on. Jordan Syatt, welcome to the show, brother. How are you today?
Man, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. It's always great to see you.
Man, your journey is quite fun. Like, there's a lot of different aspects of it. Before we kind of dive into the backstory of it, I'm curious, what are you working on right now? What are you excited about that you're kind of throwing your life into?
The main thing is, so I have a almost 2-year-old daughter, and my wife is a little over 7 months pregnant. So we've got Bezrat Hashem, we have another daughter on the way within the next month and a half or so. So really trying to just be as present as I can for that from a family perspective. From a fitness perspective, it's funny. I started off I grew up wrestling and I've done jujitsu for years and all of that. But recently I've gotten very involved in mobility work, just trying to improve my mobility, which has been, I feel like an old man. I'm only 33, so I'm still very young. But I'm at a point where I'm like, I really want to be mobile and flexible and feel good. So I'm very passionate about that right now. And otherwise, just doing what I always do. I've been posting on social media since 2011. It's when I started making content. So I do that every day. It's basically all my focus is I just want to try and help as many people as I can.
I love that. It's so funny as you look at your social media, like people really, early on in the process of social media, kind of getting yourself out there, just kind of, wetting your whistle, trying to find out who you are. And it's really cool to see how much you've progressed over the years. It's funny, just even watching your very first video that you posted to today. I don't know. It's like, there is a confidence level that is completely different. Not that it's still you, but the confidence level is night and day. And I'm sure that's going to come up in the conversation of where that kind of started to come from. But I love what you're doing. I love the fact that you have a huge heart for what you're doing. And the people that are really the no BS, that cut straight to the core, they're my favorite people in the world. Because instead of fluffing it up to make it sound good or digestible, you actually just go straight to the issue and you say, this is what we need to change. This is what we need to do. And I think a lot more people need that, especially in their fitness, especially in their nutritional ways. So I'm curious, where did you grow up? You grew up in Somerville, Massachusetts. Is that correct?
So I lived in Somerville as I got a little bit older, but I grew up in a town outside of Boston, so it was called Sudbury. So just outside Somerville for the first 18 years of my life, and then I moved to Israel. So I was in Israel for a while, and New York City, and Delaware, and now my family and I, we live in Dallas, Texas.
Wow, I love that. So what was early childhood like for you? Because you have some interesting dynamics where you are in the pecking order, but then on top of that, you don't have a strong male figure like the father figure that most boys need in their life. What was that early childhood like for you?
Man, that's a great question. My mom has been like the main constant in my life. My dad was there early on, but he was there, but he wasn't there, if that makes sense. We used to have jokes in the house, like, what position do I play in this? Or like, what sport do I play? Or like what, and just wasn't there. He didn't know. So, my mom, she's a bad dude. She's a lawyer, or she was a lawyer. She's like a fierce woman. So she could play both roles in a sense of giving me like real structure and order, but also having a very loving and caring environment. So I was a terrible student. I was so bad in school. I was in, I don't know, it's probably politically incorrect now, but when I was a kid, they called it SPED. I was in special education. So I was in SPED, and it was very weird because I was the black sheep in my family. My entire family, especially my mom's side, is doctors and lawyers and professors and superintendents and musicians and very high intellect people. And my brother is the same, super, super, super smart. And I was just the one who wasn't good in school, but I loved sports. I loved athletics. And I really leaned into that. And that's really what I ended up focusing on. And so that's where I found my passion and my purpose. I ended up getting an internship when I was 14 at a gym in a town called Newton, Massachusetts. And I worked there all through high school, and I just fell in love with it. And that's how I got into the fitness industry. But in terms of overall childhood, I think in terms of like that, where does the straightforward, no BS, where does that come from? Part of it is never mind my family. It's also just, it's sort of Massachusetts. You know, a lot of people call Massachusetts, they call them massholes. Boston is a very blunt, straightforward East Coast vibe of, it's like, I don't care if you like me or if you don't like me, I'm going to say it like it is. And so it's funny when I look at people, the majority of people, because I can look at the analytics of who follows me, I can see the vast majority of people who follow me from the East Coast, they really like what I say and how I say it. Generally, West Coast people do not like me as much. They tend to be more beat around the bush. They just want to make everyone feel good and be nice. And that's just not how I talk, and it's not my personality. It is also very much embedded within my family. It's also very much embedded in Judaism. Judaism is, it's a lot of arguing and debating, even around holidays. Like, it's literally within the scripture, like, you're supposed to debate, you're supposed to argue. It's not just like, this is definitive, let's have a real debate around it. And also it's often centered around drinking a lot of wine at the same time, which makes for a hell of a debate over Passover. But that's very much my personality. And that's, I think it comes through sort of like, is the first thing you said. It's just sort of how I am. And I say everything with love. It's not trying to be rude or mean. It's just, it's all with love. And I also think that sometimes people will beat around the bush, and in their mind, they're doing it to try and spare someone's feelings. But while they're sparing their feelings, they're actually not giving them the truth. And not giving them the truth is actually not helping the person. So sometimes I think there's obviously a balance to it, but sometimes being the most straightforward and most direct is, in my way, showing that I care about you a lot. Because if I didn't care, I wouldn't tell you at all.
Yeah. I love the interaction, like your mom kind of being the no BS person, you know,
yes,
hard on you. It reminds me of a story of a friend of mine. He's Jewish, and he said something in front of his grandmother, and out of nowhere, she socks him in the, like, I'm talking full on, punches him in the face. Like, don't you ever say that again. And he never did. Like, it's just one of those things, like, you know, the women they're powerhouses. Like, you don't mess with them.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like I have a lot of Italian friends, and I feel like Jewish mothers and Italian mothers are very similar. They're just like, shut up. Don't say that. Don't talk to me like that. And my mom is coming here because she still lives in Boston and we live in Dallas. She's coming here she comes probably like 4 or 5 times a year. She just needs to see her granddaughter. Dude, we still get in huge fights. But the great part about it is, even though it's always a fight, it's never an existential threat to our relationship. It's always just, we can fight, and then as soon as it's over, be like, I love you so much. I'll see you. Whatever. It's not like we can fight and have it not be
healthy.
There's no concern around, is this ending our relationship? It's that we can just have a real debate and really get into it. Never ad hominem, but like really debate. Yeah. And then it's over. What's up? Yeah. What's next? Let's move on.
I love that so much. So, I mean, you were a small kid. You and your brother were small. And I love kind of the introduction that you got into fitness and into really sports was wrestling, right? Your mom comes in because she's afraid that you're going to get beat up in school, and she says, "Hey, I'm putting you both in wrestling." And I think the pinnacle relationship of how you like between son and mom is when she says, I'm putting you in wrestling, and you turn and you say, you want me to hit him over the head with a chair? Like, you're like, no, you idiot. Like that symbolizes like the perfect relationship of what I see between you and your mom. That was
Yes.
really the start of really the love of fitness for you. How did that continue to grow over the years, starting with wrestling?
Yeah. So just to go a little further, like I was 8 years old when she wanted to put my brother and I in wrestling. You know, we're two small Jewish boys in public schools, and she thought we were going to get picked on, which we did. And she put us in wrestling. And when she said, I'm going to put you in wrestling, the only wrestling I know at 8 years old is WWE style wrestling. So I was like, you want me to hit someone with a chair? And she's like, no, you idiot, Olympic style wrestling. I fell in love with wrestling from the beginning. It was the first thing that I was really, really good at because I was terrible in school and I was good at wrestling, and I went in and I was immediately good at it. By the time I got to high school, it was the first thing that I had in my life that I had really put a lot of effort into, not just in the wrestling room, but running, weightlifting, my nutrition. It was the first thing in my life where I was like, this is really important to me, and I'm going to dedicate a lot of time to this individual thing.
Mm.
And I think when I started to see the results of getting stronger, losing body fat, seeing more muscle definition, actually winning matches, when I saw the results of that hard work, it's addicting.
Mm.
It's that feeling of success is addicting. And I think we could relay this to any aspect of life outside of fitness, but sort of like, when you start saving money. I remember when I first started saving money, it's like, oh man, I could just spend this and go out with the friends or whatever it is. But you start saving money, put it in some compound interest, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, like that's crazy how much money I've saved in the last year. Let's go harder. Let's do this even more. Same thing. So,
Yeah.
or once you invest in a relationship with a significant other, or invest in a relationship with God, whatever it is, like when you start to see the impact of it, you want to do it more and more and more and more.
Mm.
So that's sort of what happened with fitness. And then I started learning more about it, and I seeked out some really wonderful mentors who took me under their wing and taught me from 14, 15, 16 years old. And it just became an actual addiction. Like it's all I wanted to think of. It's all I thought about. It's all I wanted to do.
Mm.
It's all I wanted to read about. I remember my mom would be like, you could, read some books for fun. And I was like, you don't understand. Like, this is fun. Reading The Science and Practice of Strength Training by Vladimir Zatsiorsky is fun for me. Like this stuff that's what I really cared about. And so it just became this absolute obsession that was a great amount of fun. And it was the most important thing in my life for a very long time.
Yeah. Wow. And if I'm not mistaken, Kevin McCarthy and Stacy Shadler, those were really your first mentors apart from your wrestling coach, but those were your first mentors in the actual fitness world, right? What were kind of some of those early memories and lessons that you remember of getting to train with them? Right? Because if I remember correctly, you sent them an email like, "Hey, I'll do whatever you want. Just let me come and train with you," which is that is like the typical entrepreneur story. I feel like where you say, "I don't care what it is that I have to do, but I have to do this, and I'll sweep the floors, I'll clean the toilets, I'll pick up all the trash outside. Just let me in the door." What were some of those early memories that you have of training with them?
First, man, I'm super impressed. You've done your homework. You know the names of the trainers that I first had when that's impressive. Respect on that. Man, that blew me away that you knew Kevin McCarthy and Stacy Shadler and you even pronounced it properly. Man, amazing. You're right. I sent an email and I applied I was 14 years old and I really wanted to learn more about strength training so I could improve my wrestling. And because when I started wrestling, or when I made it to high school, I made varsity as a freshman. So I was 14 years old. I beat out a junior for the varsity spot. There's a major difference between a 14-year-old and 16, 17, 18-year-olds in terms of strength. So I was like, I need to get stronger if I'm actually going to be competitive. So I lived in a town called Sudbury. There's a gym in my town. It's a chain of gyms, but it was called Fitness Together. And I wrote them an email. I just said the same thing. I said, listen, I'll take the trash out. I'll clean the floors. I'll wipe the mats. Let me come and learn from you. And I went in for an interview, and I was 14 years old. And the manager of the gym basically says, our clients want a very private experience. They don't want a high school kid following them around. So it's not going to work. I was like, okay, fine. But I was devastated. I walked home. I think it was like 4 or 5 miles home. I was just in a really bad headspace. I walked in through the front door, and my mom could tell that I wasn't in a good space. We had a little mud room with the laundry and everything. And she's like, what happened? I said, I didn't get it. And I'm walking. I'm about to go in the basement. And she's just like, now what? And those 2 words honestly changed my life, because I still think about those 2 words in so many different places. But I turned around. I was like, what do you mean now what? She was like, okay, so you didn't get that internship. Now what? And I didn't understand that I could try again. I didn't understand that I could go for another gym. I could try something else out. And she was like, there are many gyms out there. Go to apply to more. So then I applied to this other gym. It was called Punch Kettlebell Gym with Stacy Shadler and Kevin McCarthy. Wrote them the same email. I'll take the trash out. I'll clean the floors. Let me learn from you. And I was so blessed, man, because number one, that they are unbelievably science-based. They were far ahead of their time, and everything happens for a reason in my mind. And that was one of the reasons why I went there, to learn from these unbelievably well-educated science-based fitness professionals. And one of the major things that really stuck out to me during my time there is, from the moment I started, I was 14. You rarely see a 14-year-old in a gym, like working in a gym. Maybe like they're cleaning and stuff, but as soon as I got there, they got me involved as a coach, because that's what I wanted to do. And I was highly supervised, but they had me start teaching the warm-ups, correcting exercises. They were really watching over me and helping me progress as a coach. And they never once referred to me as the intern. They never once made me feel like I was a child, even though I was. To every member in that gym who was in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, to every member in that gym, I was Coach Jordan. And by calling me coach, it did something from a psychological and emotional perspective that made me want to live up to being a coach. And it really taught me that people will live up to the expectations that you set for them, or they'll live down to them. And if they had treated me like an intern and almost done that traditional hazing or speaking down to someone who is just starting out, it would have given me so many opportunities and reasons to justify not trying, not working hard, slacking off. But because I was called a coach at 14 years old, I was like, I need to study. I need to read books. I need to make sure I'm doing everything properly. I do want to clean these mats properly. I do want to make sure the trash is cleaned up very quickly. I do want to make sure that I'm cueing these exercises properly from 14. And I think both Kevin and Stacy referring to me as coach from 14 honestly changed my life, in combination with my mom saying, now what? Because now at any point in time when I'm going through any struggle, that's never the end. It's okay, cool. Now what? Yeah. It's always now what? You can always do something else. There's no point to dwell and just be sad and upset and stamp your feet and cry. It's like, cool, now what? Move on. Yeah. Let's go. It's so those 2 things were, I think, majorly important for me at that point in my life.
I love that, because so many of us, we get rejection and we think it's final. We kind of, we're finalists. We go, oh, well, that door closed. So I guess that's just my dream is dead now. And so I'm not going to pursue that anymore. And a lot of people need to hear that it's not going to be the first time. It's not going to be the second time. It won't be the 50th time. But if you keep on going, and if it's something that you really love, like you love fitness and nutrition, like no one, I don't think, really understands how much you love it. Like, it is truly an obsession. But then you meet the obsession while you start becoming this coach, or you are a coach instantly in your mind because of the way that you're treated. You also go from internal of, I want this for me, to now I want this for other people. You had an interaction with your very first client, Fred, that I think,
you're good. You're so good, man.
That moment where you start realizing, because, we're young, we want to get fit, we want to look good. And at one point you realize it's not about you, and you fall in love with the other person. That's one of the things I really love about you, is when you're working with a client, it's not about you and you looking good and bolstering yourself up. It's about actually helping the person move forward. What did Fred do to you to allow you to really connect with your clients in a way that would really open doors up years later?
Yeah, man. Again, you did your homework. You're very good. And listen, I've done literally hundreds, maybe even over 1,000 podcasts at this point. I've never had anyone like really know a lot of the story like you do. So huge props. Um, so I was working at the gym for probably about a year, a little over a year before they felt comfortable giving me one-on-one clients. They didn't just throw me in the lion's den. And even when I did get my first one-on-one client, Fred, I was highly supervised. But they wanted to start giving me an opportunity to really coach people, and not just in a class format, but also one-on-one. So Fred, he was 68. And at this point, I'm like 15 years old and I'm getting stronger. I'm getting more fit. And the whole reason I'm working out is, number one, I love it, but mainly I want to be a better wrestler and I want to look good naked. That's what any 15-year-old boy, that's what they want. I just want to look good naked and be a better wrestler. And I think it's very easy, not just in fitness, but in all aspects of life, to only look at things through your own lens. And so I was looking at fitness through my lens of, okay, well, everyone wants to get stronger and everyone wants to look good naked. Everyone wants to have a six pack. I sat down with Fred. Kevin and Stacy made me do a whole sit down consult, just like you do with every client. And I was like, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve? What are you struggling with? Da, 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 da. His only goal, it was not about losing body fat. It wasn't about getting a six pack. It wasn't about having a super strong bench press. His only goal was to be able to pick up his grandson without hurting his shoulders, because he had some serious rotator cuff issues in both of his shoulders. And I will remember this for my whole life. I was awestruck. I was dumbfounded. My jaw, I was just like, that's so crazy that this guy is doing fitness and I'm doing fitness, but we're both doing fitness for completely different reasons. And if we're doing it for different reasons, there must be different methodologies to achieve these goals. And that's when I became obsessed with learning how to help Fred and subsequently other people achieve their goals. And I think many personal trainers struggle with this, where they assume, okay, every client wants what I want. So these personal trainers program for their clients in the way they would program for themselves. It's a very short-sighted way of thinking about it. And it's candidly a dangerous way of training people, because never mind the issues that could come with someone in a different training space, but you're not going to help them achieve their goals. You're going to help them achieve your goals, which will help. It will push them away, especially if they're not aligning goals. If I was trying to train Fred to get a six pack and be a better wrestler, he probably would have gotten injured. He would have had serious issues, and who knows what would have happened. But it was only within a few months after training where he was able to pick up his grandson, and his training and my training looked very different. But we were both incredibly happy with our own training because we were achieving our goals. So it was this obsession became, I don't care about me right now. I care about how do I help the person in front of me. And it's that's what I always tell coaches. I'm like, if you or people who want to be a personal trainer, I'm like, it's one thing to like working out. It's another thing to like coaching someone else to achieve their goals. They're two very different things.
They really are. And you see that actually throughout all of your social media. Like it's really funny, because when someone asks a question based off of one of your posts, one of your videos, and they say, well, like the first reply from what I see the majority of time is, well, what's the goal that you want? What's the end result? That's normally the number one thing. Like, and they're like, well, I want to lose fat. And I just, this is what I'm going to do. And you're like, that is never going to work. You need to be in a calorie deficit. By the way, calorie deficit, if you ever want to set Jordan off like an explosion, just talk about being in a calorie deficit, and that you don't want that and you want to lose weight. Like, that will just erupt him into an entirely different world. So you graduate from high school, and I think it's kind of crazy that you end up going to college, because that's not something that was originally in the card. Actually, before you even went to college, you actually went overseas to, I would almost say, the motherland. What was that experience like? Because you went over there, you were doing tours, you were a tour guide at one point. Like, there's really cool aspects of you going back home. Luckily, your mom was smart enough to not let you join the IDF, but we don't need a dangerous Jordan out there. But like, what were some of those lessons? Like maybe a lesson that you learned from there, and then maybe even that start of journey when you come back to Delaware.
Yeah. So when I was 16, I went on a youth trip to Israel with my synagogue, and immediately fell in love with it. Like immediately you land. There's something. Have you been?
I haven't. I want to so badly.
Man,
It's
there's
literally at the top one place my wife and I want to go.
it's when you decide to go, let me know. I have family there. I'm happy to give you a place to stay, and they would be happy to host you. There's something about it, about being there, that's unlike anywhere else in the world. I've been very blessed to travel, and there's something you feel as soon as you're there it's just different.
Yeah.
And I felt at home as soon as I landed there, and it was only like a 10-day trip, but I knew that I had to go back, and I knew that I did not want to pursue school at least that point in time. I was really struggling in school. And my rabbi actually set up a fund through my synagogue, and I was I was the anonymous student that they were sending abroad, and they literally got paid for me to go to Israel for a year.
Mm.
And I volunteered with Holocaust survivors. I lived in Jerusalem. I taught English to underprivileged kids in a city outside Tel Aviv, a city called Bat Yam. I lived all over Israel, and it was such an amazing experience. There were a number of things that I learned. One of them related to fitness. What I started doing was when I was living in Tel Aviv, I still loved fitness and I still loved coaching, and I still wanted to help people. So I started a boot camp that I would do on the beach in Tel Aviv. And I would just like have people come. Usually it was like mothers and their kids that would come. And we would just do workouts. And I would take these little like nylon bags with drawstrings, and I'd fill them up with sand, and we would do little workouts on the beach in Tel Aviv. And it was super fun. And my year there with volunteering and teaching, it solidified for me that coaching was what I wanted to do in my immediate future. That was like of everything else that coaching was for me, because no matter where I was in the world, I couldn't get away from it. I just wanted to coach people. So that was very important. Another major lesson that I took was, I'll never forget this. America's an amazing place. I love America. It's an absolutely incredible country. So much freedom, so much opportunity. One cultural issue that I've found is we focus so much on work that sometimes we forget to live. Mm-hmm. And Israel, I've found, is very good at balancing that. And the way I bring this up is, I remember I was going to it was like 2 p.m. I believe it was a Wednesday. I think it was a Wednesday. It was about 2 p.m. I was going, and I needed to go get some deodorant. And there's a little shop, just like, it's all like local shops and a little family-owned shop. So I go to the shop, and I'm about to go in, but I see the owner of it, the guy, he's just closing the shop door, like those metal grates at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's going on? And he was like, oh, I'm closing early. I want to go to the beach with my kids. I was like, 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, this dude just wants to go to the beach. He's closing shop. He's like, no, I've made enough money for today. I'm good. I just want to go to the beach with my kids. And that is very reminiscent of Israeli society. It's very family focused. It's very, you work just enough to be able to live. You don't live to work. That has seeped into what I aspire to be as a family man, as a husband, as a father, as a business owner, where I love that I can work. I love that I have the freedoms to work. I love the opportunities that I have, but I also don't want my daughter to only remember me as the guy who wasn't home, or the guy who was cared more about business than about her. So that was a major learning point for me. And I'm glad I learned it at a younger age. And I'm glad that I really focused on my business before I had kids, because now I have the ability to take my foot off the gas a little bit and spend more time with my wife and children.
Well, I think it's really interesting too, because even culturally, you're kind of a little bit of the black sheep, right? Because usually, in culturally, you would pick something that you're good at and you just do that, and then life comes separately. Like, okay, you go do everything else. You actually get to do something that you absolutely love and are passionate about every single day, and you do it for work. Like, is that strange to kind of think about that conceptually, based off of like growing up and maybe having that dichotomy of like, okay, this is work, and now you go live life, where now like you love fitness so much you could do it all the time. Obviously you have family now, and so that changes the dynamic of things. But I'm curious, that relationship of being so passionate and doing something that you love for a living, and also making sure that you're living at the same time, with that kind of dichotomy of balance.
Dude, it's number one is it's such a blessing, and I don't take it for granted. Or maybe you do. Maybe I think there are probably times where I do take it for granted, but I thank God for it every day. I know the number of people in the world who can do what they love as their job is it's a very small percentage of people. I'm very blessed that at such a young age, I found my passion. I think a lot of people struggle to find their passion. With that being said, I think finding your passion, it really is, it's finding it. You have to search for it. I was fortunate enough to find it on sort of the first go. It doesn't mean there wasn't adversity. Like even now, my family members are like, you could still go back to school, be a doctor. You could still go back to school, be a lawyer. Like my family doesn't think personal training is a career.
Yeah.
It's very funny. There's still people, my family doesn't like what I do. They're like, they look at it as doctors respectable, lawyers respectable. Teachers are respectable, professors, but not a personal trainer.
Yeah.
Either way, I'm very blessed that I get to do it. And I think that in terms of balance, it's really tough. I don't know if I actually believe in balance. I'm not sure if it's something. Balance is, what is it, right? It's like, does balance mean that it's equal parts everything? Like it's equal parts family, equal parts business, equal parts sleep, equal parts friendships, equal parts, like, is that balance? Or is balance where sometimes you focus a little bit more on this and a little bit less on that, and then it switches, right? It's like this idea of balance. It's like this idea of proportionality. It's what is it?
Yeah.
And how can you really define it? So for me, the way that I handle balance is it's sort of like how I handle balance within training programs. And what I mean by that is when I'm designing someone's workout program, I don't design one program and that's it. It's not like, hey, this is your 4-week phase and that's all I'm thinking about. The way that I design workout programs is, okay, well, what did we do in the last 3 months? What are we planning for the next 3 months? And then what are we planning for the 3 months after that? It's almost like training is like a year-long process. And I look at every program is defined and created by examining the ones that came before it and the ones that are coming after it. And so in one phase, we call it a mesocycle. It could be a month, it could be 4 months, but in this phase, we're really going to focus on your strength. And then in the next phase, we're really going to focus on your power. And in the next phase, we're really going to focus on your mobility. So by the end of the year, you've focused on everything, but not all at once. Because if you try and achieve everything at once, you're probably not going to do that well. So for me, with business and with life, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was out of family, friends, fitness, business, and sleep. Out of those 5 things, you can only ever really focus on 2, maybe 3 at once. And so for me, I try and say like which ones are going to get my like main focus, and then which ones am I just going to maintain, and then I'll try and shuffle the deck every now and then. But the truth is, and maybe balance is real and I just haven't figured it out yet, I don't think true balance really exists. I think it's all about figuring out what is your priority right now, focus on that priority, do your best to maintain the other things, and then shuffle the deck.
Yeah, I love that because I think you're right. I don't think there really is such a thing called balance. I think it's just counterbalancing constantly. It's not necessarily trying to keep things level, but life is fluid. Like sometimes you need this, sometimes you need that. And I love that you talk about, out of the 5 things that, you do every single day, or the 5 things that you could focus on that are important, only those 2 things that you could really focus on. Like when I'm working with a client and they have the list of everything that they want to achieve, I look at all those things and I'm like, okay, so if we were to take everything here, like what would be the one area that if you were to focus on this area, everything else would improve? Like sleep. Like if you got more sleep, do you think you'd be a better husband, a better dad, that you wouldn't be, constantly irate and frustrated at the small little, hey daddy, right? But like people don't think that way. They think, well, I have all of these balls. Like I think it was probably like 5 years ago where I heard someone say life is much like juggling. You have rubber balls and you have crystal balls. And you have to determine which ones are the rubber ones and which ones are the crystal ones, because family is a crystal one. If you let that drop, it shatters. You can't put it back together. And even if you do, it's going to be in pieces. And so a lot of us have to be
That's genius. That's
Like,
a
yeah,
genius analogy. I'm going to use that. Dude, that is beautiful.
well, I mean,
It's a
because
beautiful analogy.
yeah, and like your obsession. I go back to this because I think you are. I think all great people are obsessive. They become obsessive about this. Like I just think of the time when everyone else is going partying in college, and you decided to stay up late at midnight to go take a precision nutrition certification. Like who does that? Uh, like there is an obsession about this. And I think to the outside person that looking at you goes, man, like he is like 10 out of 10. And I think that maybe in your mind at one point you were, and then you got to meet, Gary, who
Mm-hmm.
completely rocked your world of what does it actually look like to be 100% productive, or at least trying to get there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I know you focus a lot, story time of like that moment of working through Gary Vee. And I don't think we have to go too much into that, but I'm curious, what were some of those massive lessons that you learned during that 3 years of intensity of go, 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 like almost like the American style way of going, and then getting out of that and realizing, oh man, there's this other aspect of life that I need to focus on.
Yeah, I mean, there were two. I learned a lot from coaching Gary Vaynerchuk and working with him, but the two major lessons are as follows. The first is if you want to do something, you just have to work harder, and you can. It doesn't mean you won't have to sacrifice other areas of your life, but it's very simple. You just work harder, and I understand it sounds oversimplified and it's not that easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is. You find a time and you find a way to work harder. And I didn't get it until I saw Gary do it, until almost like that seeing is believing type thing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that I was working as hard as I could. I thought that, and to be fair, like I was a 26-year-old entrepreneur starting my own business, and I was doing well and I was working hard. Then I started working with Gary and I saw how hard this guy works every day from like 5 or 6 a.m. until midnight, 1 a.m. Every single day.
You meet the unicorn.
Dude, it was just, I've never seen anything like it. And it was one of those things where it took me seeing it in action for me to realize, oh, I can work way harder than I'm working right now. And I took it to heart and I did. And I sacrificed sleep. I sacrificed my health. I sacrificed relationships. I made many sacrifices that at this point in my life, I wouldn't be willing to make. But at that point in my life, I was willing to make it because the crystal ball, as you put it, at that point in my life was business. Mm-hmm. That was the crystal ball above, and everything else was a plastic ball. Now, family is a crystal ball, friends are a crystal ball, sleep is a crystal ball. Now my business is like, it's not crystal. I would say it's, I don't know. It's
a combination of crystal.
It can break.
Yeah.
It can break, but it takes a lot more to break it. I've tried to make my business a little bit more anti-fragile, if you're familiar with that book, where maybe it can break, but when it breaks, it actually gets stronger as a result of it. So I will say, in terms of priority, like family is number one. So that will always come first. Whereas before, when I was 25, 26, like I didn't have a family, so it wasn't number one. Yeah. So that's you can always work harder if you really want to achieve something. The other thing, and I sort of just touched on it a little bit, was I saw how hard Gary worked. I saw how much he sacrificed in order to work that much. And I realized I don't want that life. That life was not for me. And it was funny because we were taking private jets all over the place, getting very special treatment from all these different people. But one thing I realized is, first and foremost, private jets suck. I'll be the first one to say it. The Wi-Fi on them is terrible. The turbulence is way worse than a regular plane. The best part is that you don't have to wait in line at TSA or anything. That is the best part for sure. But other than that, I 10 times out of 10 prefer a commercial jet. It's just safer. They have way fewer crashes, but whatever. In terms of people, I think people see how someone else is living on social media, all the money, the fame, the people speaking nicely about them. And it's human nature to want that. having seen someone live through it, and on a very teeny scale, me having lived through it, you start to realize the people that matter the most are the people that actually know you. And all these people who are speaking really nice and trying to do nice things, a lot of times they've got ulterior motives. They don't actually really know you. They don't really care about you. It's the people who are with you and who really know who you are on the inside, not just based on how many followers you have, how much money you have, or what you might be able to do or not do for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, long story short, I realized I don't want to work that hard. If I want to take a nap in the middle of the day, I want to do that. Gary doesn't take naps in the middle of the day. There's no freaking way. If I want to just go on a walk at noon with my wife and daughter, I want to do that. I want to be able to have that time and the freedom and the emotional energy to do that and to not think about work, cancel calls, whatever. I'm just taking the day off. It's fine. That's the life I want to live as a now 33-year-old, which I know is very young, but I want more family and less business in my life. And so I respect Gary and I learned a lot from him. Main one being, I don't want that life.
Yeah. And I love that you say that, because I think there is a point. I think it's a different point for everyone. Some people, they feel like, oh, when I make this amount of money, then I'm going to be really happy and life will be great. And, and they get that point and then they're just empty. Life sucks. And then there's other people that for some reason or another, like they're just happy, even with having nothing. Like I remember in 2009, I was in Africa. I was on a missions trip in Africa, and I remember going to it's like the poorest place in the world. It's essentially where they dropped off all the slaves when slavery was being abolished across the world, and so they just dropped all these people off in one place, and they just settled there. And I remember before I left, I said, I will not get emotional by the way that I see people living somewhere else in the world, because this is what they live in. They don't know anything else. And what's really interesting is I walk through this area, like literally 3 to 5 feet of garbage people live on. Like you look out into the ocean, beautiful ocean, and the ocean, like from maybe a half mile out, is just littered with garbage. Like you have to wade through garbage. And I'm walking through and I'm seeing maybe the oldest kid is maybe 8, and they live in these conditions. And they are the happiest people I've ever met. They are full of joy. Their relationships are rich. And I remember leaving after being there for 3 weeks. I remember leaving. And when I got back to the States, there was like 3 weeks of depression because I felt so disconnected from people. And this is back in 2009. Like we're not talking recently. This was years ago. And we are that much more disconnected today in community because we're all connected going, yeah, this is what I want. This is what I'm going after. There was a period probably about 2 years ago where I don't even remember what the achievement was. I got something, I bought something. And I was like, I don't even care about this anymore. This isn't even like exciting to me. People like, oh, I got this watch and I got that and I got the car. And I'm like, you don't care at a certain point because you realize that aspects of life are super important. And you met your wife. You actually, I think it's kind of funny. I'm curious about that story actually, because you met your wife, like way before you guys ever got married. If I remember correctly, it was like, wasn't like in the
sixth grade. Sixth grade. Yeah, we were 12 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, 6th grade at Curtis Middle School. I'm curious.
Wow, you're good.
Where did, like, how did that come together? Because I God conspires for us, not against us. I'm curious. Like, did you guys know each other the entire time, or was it kind of coming back and there were moments? How did you come back to meeting your wife?
No, so she moved to my town in 6th grade. And I remember like she moved to my middle school and she was the new girl with her stepsister. And I was like, man, she's super hot. So I asked her, we were going on like a school field trip to this roller skating place. It's called Roller Kingdom in Marlborough, Massachusetts. And I was like, hey, do you want to be my girlfriend and go to Roller Kingdom? And she was like, yeah. So we go and there's this guy there selling these light up roses. It's not a real rose. It's like a rose that flashes and lights up. And I was like, oh, well, all the movies say that girls like roses. I'm supposed to get girls roses. So I buy her this $5 rose. I give it to her, and her stepsister laughs in my face as I give it to her. And then the next day, my wife, she broke up with me. She was like, I think things are getting too serious too quickly. And then I was like, all right, well, I'm never being nice to girls ever again, because being nice isn't good. It doesn't work. And so she ended up going to a different high school. And so we didn't talk for like 15 years after that. And then before my Instagram really took off, but I was still posting fitness stuff, she somehow found my Instagram and shot me a message. And she was like, hey, I really like your fitness stuff. And I was like, you are super hot. And I didn't say that, but I was like, she was,
that's going back to the rose again.
She was living in Atlanta and I was living in New York. I was coaching Gary Vaynerchuk, and basically I was like, hey, I have a business trip in New York. I have a business trip in Atlanta. Would you want to meet up for a drink? And she was like, yeah, sure. So we met up and we've been together ever since. And I actually did not have a business trip in Atlanta. I just said that I did so I could go see her. And I didn't tell her that until after we got engaged. And then, and the crazy thing is, we were going through stuff, or she was going through, because she does a lot of art. She loves artwork. And so she was going through some of her old drawings, and she found a drawing of the rose that I gave her, because she had kept the rose for years. She forgot where she got it from, but she had kept it. And then literally like a month before we started dating, she moved homes and she ended up throwing it out with a bunch of other stuff. But she just found a drawing of the rose very recently.
Whoa. That is
very cool.
That is so cool. Oh my gosh. So you guys have been married for a while now. You have your first child. You have another child coming here really soon. And I think there's something really cool about becoming a dad. Like as a dude, I think we think about it. We're like, yeah, we'll be different. Like something will change. We're told that, but there truly is a moment, I think. And I'm just going to speak to my own experience, because I had a daughter first, sons later. And my sons, like I got them and I was like, okay, let's throw them on the floor. Like they're good. Like let them roll around in the dirt, little pigs. Like with my daughter though, there was such an incredible bond that I had with her that I realized that I needed to change. Very similar to, your very first client, honestly. I mean, there's that moment where you realize that you want to stay around long enough. Like I was overweight when it was probably like 8 months before we had our daughter. And I was like, I got to stop being so fat. Like I need to go work out a little bit. I need to change my diet. I need to stop eating this and do that. Like I started to change things because I realized I couldn't even roll on the floor with my daughter if I had her at that moment. Like, and it's not like I was like obese or grossly overweight. It was just I was starting to ache. And I think there's a moment for a father when you have that connection with your daughter that you realize that, man, I want to be different. And especially since, your early childhood father, like absent, essentially, what has having a daughter done for you and changed the way who you show up today as?
Number one, it's made me outrageously emotional in a very weird way. It's I don't even know how to describe it, man. I'm not a crier. Like I've never been a crier. Maybe when I was a little kid, like a toddler, I'm sure I cried, but I don't know, from like 8 years old until she was born, I never cried. I just, even if people would die, like I could be really upset and I could be very sad, but crying was just I never felt like it wouldn't happen. Again, like one of my best friends, he was killed when I was like 21, and it was one of the most devastating experiences of my life, but I didn't cry. For whatever reason, crying just didn't happen to me. Man, as soon as she was born, I'm watching Denzel Washington in Man on Fire when he's coaching that little girl to do her swim meet. And I'm in tears, dude. I'm bawling. And it's like, what the hell is going on? I'm so emotional. And it was like a light switch. There was no build up. There was no, hey, like you're going to start feel. It was just from the moment she was born, way more emotional. So that's been very, very odd.
What do I do with this?
I really don't even know how to really handle it at this point. It's just much more emotional. And I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just, it's odd. It's an odd thing to reconcile. I've never experienced it before. I really think I have nothing against it if people have done it. I never did any like psychedelics, any of those types of drugs. I have friends who have, and they've told me that when they've done it, they've seen, like, they could see colors they've never seen before. And with my daughter, I feel emotions I've never felt before. Love, it's a new emotion. It's different. It's like I've never experienced love in the same way that I have with my daughter. Even with my wife, it's different. With my mom, it's different. With my brother, it's different. The love I have for my daughter is a different emotion, and I really don't think it should be the same word. I think the love that I have for other people, I think the love you have for a child should be a different word. I don't think it should be love. I think we should make a new word for it, because it is a different emotion on a very different level. Otherwise, like, I don't really think I've changed much in terms of how I am or how I talk or what I believe, but I mean, I'm way more protective, way more protective. I've really come into the role of being like protecting the household, making sure everyone's safe, check it. Like, I never would check the smoke detectors or CO2 alarms, or making sure we've got those door jams, and making like coming up with plans if there's a home invader, making sure I've got the window, like the thing to smash the window if you go into water or you need to cut the seatbelt off. Like, I was never that guy. I'm now that guy. It's very weird. And I think that's all driven out of emotion, and also probably evolutionary responses to just, this is what you do when you become a man and you become a father. Like, I've fallen into that very quickly, but yeah, that's the best way I can describe it.
I love it. I mean, it's funny because it's kind of like a new lens. Like every now and then in your life, there's a new lens that gets put over, and you see things the same, but also with different context. Like, a prime example of like the love of a father for their child. Like, you read the story of, Abraham and Isaac, and you're like, oh, like, okay, like takes him up the mountain, gonna sacrifice him, okay.
That's weird.
Like, that's weird. Like, that doesn't really, okay, sure. And then from a father's standpoint, you look at that and you're like, holy Toledo. Like, to be walking, it wasn't just like an hour trip. It was a long trek. And he's thinking about this and like, okay, like, I think I'm missing something here, God, because I'm missing the sacrifice. And like there's something about that where all of a sudden the relationship that you realize, especially if you have a relationship with God, you start to realize just how much God loves his people when you have a child like that. Man, this has been such an incredible time, Jordan. Like, there is so much more I want to go into because your story is so rich with so many lessons. I do have one more question here for you, but before we get to that question, I want to encourage all of you guys listening right now, go check out Jordan's podcast. It's awesome. Jordan Syatt mini podcast. Follow him on Instagram. Go follow him on YouTube. His language is colorful. So but
I've kept it mild here.
He's kept it mild. Like, this is a whole, I was surprised, but like, he has such amazing content. And if you want someone that's going to tell you exactly how it is, and if you want actual change, go follow him. Just absorb some of his content. Go get his book. And if you decide by following him that you actually want to show up differently in your life physically, I want to encourage you, go check out his Inner Circle. It's absolutely fantastic. You have to be an idiot not to buy it. It's so freaking cheap. But go look at it. You can find it at sfinnercircle.com. And I promise you, like, you will not be disappointed by the type of coaching that you're going to get, the accountability that comes with that. So make sure you go check him out. Jordan, there's a lot of people, I think, today that worry. Like, we're in a worry culture. I don't know how we got to this place, but everyone's worried about something. They're worried about someone else, and specifically about what people think about us. And you've been emboldened to show up very differently, I think, today than maybe you had 20 years ago. And so I'm curious, what was the shift for you to realize that other people's opinion doesn't really matter? And what would you say to the person right now who is literally anxious? They won't do anything in their life because they're so afraid of what someone might think, what people might do. What do you say to that person?
I mean, it's a great question. I think we all struggle with it to some degree. I struggle with it less because it's exposure therapy, right? Where I'm out in public on social media and I've put out an opinion and I've gotten negative feedback. And then I realized, oh, that's all that happens? I get negative. Okay, cool. And then I put out another opinion, maybe a little bit stronger, and I get negative feedback. I'm like, oh, that's it? And I give out more negative. I give more opinions and more negative feedback. And with every time, there's some negative feedback and there's also some positive feedback. And I'm like, okay, so literally worst case scenario, people are upset. That's lit, and it's like, cool. I don't care. It's like, I think we get so wrapped up in what if. When you actually experience it, it's sort of like, I know a lot of guys get nervous to go ask a girl for a number. It's like, you go ask her for a number. She says no. Oh, that's it? That's all that's going to happen? Okay, cool. Awesome. Now I have way more confidence to go do that again, and it's not a problem. But the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of the what ifs is really what causes people this anxiety. And the only way you'll overcome it is if you do it. I speak a lot with a lot of people about this in relation to gym anxiety. I'm nervous to go to the gym. I'm nervous about what people are going to think about me. And number one, I'll say there are sometimes some people who are trying to keep it mild, jerks in the gym. and they might be rude. They might say something. They might be staring, whatever. Number one, it's rare. It's not common. Number two is, even if you do come across one of those people, I'll give you a scenario. One scenario is you're 90 years old. You're looking back on your life. You didn't go to the gym. You didn't work out, and somehow you made it to 90, which is crazy. But let's just say you do. And you look back on your life. Are you proud of yourself that you didn't go to the gym because you were worried about what some random dude might have said about you? Or when you're 90 years old, looking back on your life, will you be proud that you did what you knew it was right, even though someone could have made fun of you? And 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100, every single time, you're proud of something that you did, despite knowing that something negative could have happened. And trust me, I get it. It's nerve-wracking. We all face these situations, but you have to remember the only way you'll ever get through it is to do it. Just experience it and very quickly realize worst case scenario is not a bad scenario. It's like, oh, that's it? You don't like what I think? Cool. Awesome. Have a good day. That's literally the worst case scenario. Yeah. And that's the best for online trolls too, because when they don't like what you say, like, I'm just nice to them. Cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. They get so mad, dude. They get really, and I'm just like, oh, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day. And they just keep going. I see them typing, and I'm just like, and then they'll say something else. I'm like, I really appreciate you spending the time saying that. Thank you so much. And they get so, and like, it's, dude, what a horrible existence for them. Like, how sad it has to be that individual. Yeah. So just do it. Expose yourself to it. It's exposure therapy.
Man, that is so good. I hope that you go back and you listen to this episode over and over and over. There are so many golden nuggets in this that I think that you can take, you can apply in your life. Go check out Jordan. You will not be sorry that you started following him and digesting his content. So for all of you listening, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this with a friend, because it's going to make someone's day. It's going to make a difference in their life. Until next time, remember to be more, see more, and experience more than before.